Some of these are going to sound out there, some will sound actually pretty crazy, but these are 7 conspiracy theories that may be actually true, as crazy as they may sound. Welcome back to another video. My name is Aaron and I help people expand their consciousness. Now in this video, I'm going to be showing you exactly these 7 conspiracy theories that may be true, sound a little bit crazy, some of them, many of them, but nonetheless, some of them I actually know from personal experience, people in my life that have experienced some of these things before, that they could be true. So for me, it was a process of back in 2012 when I went through my awakening, starting to see that, hey, the reality that we're being shown by the media, by the government, isn't necessarily the reality that may be actually everything that's included. There may be extra stuff included that we're not aware of. Now, first off, the thing I want to talk about is the first thing that may actually be true is that the CIA back in the day coined the term conspiracy theory, and what they did is they gave it a negative connotation to deter people from actually questioning the government, because the word conspiracy comes from the word conspire, which means a secret plan. Now, if you didn't want people looking into something, what you may do, imagine you work for a company and people are starting to look into like how you were doing the finances or something like that. And one of the things they did is they either distracted you or they made it and gave you such a negative connotation. They made you feel guilty, like, you're going to question the finance team? What? You're not a true patriot, or something like that. Or they made you feel like just like a dodo head. Like, anyone that questions the corporation's a dodo head. That's kind of what they did with the word conspiracy theory. They made anybody think that if you were to question the government, you'd be some weird lunatic. Or, it's the other thing they did too. Many people don't know this, but there's actually there's a documentary on Netflix or on YouTube that came out. It's called Out of the Shadows. And in it talks about how when they coined the word conspiracy theory, the CIA also made movies like James Bond because they had they were infiltrated into Hollywood. So they had them make James Bond series, which made the CIA look super, super cool. So on one hand, they're like, okay, we want to look like our job is the coolest job ever. We want to look like when we go home and we go home to our kids and stuff, our kids and our family are just like, you're the coolest person ever. So let's make James Bond, which is this really cool series with this really suave Sean Connery guy. And on the other side of it, we're going to have conspiracy theory be such a negative word that people don't even look into the questioning the government. So it's like kind of the 2 parts of this coin. Now, another part of the conspiracy theories, or you can look at a lot of different movies that show very dark things, especially kids' movies, that show very dark things that may point to some things that are happening in the world. Now, there's people on the planet that may know that there is a collective consciousness around the world, and one thing they know is that they can embed it with subliminal programming. Now, they've actually proven this in different commercials and before and other things like that. However, here's what I mean by that. If you were to look into like some movies, now this is going to get a little bit dark, okay? We'll go a little bit dark, a little bit further down the rabbit hole than I was going to go. But if you look at a movie like, first off, the way that I believe it works, from what the way there's a lot of like dark ritual magic that some of these elite people do. We'll get into that as well. But one of the things they do when they believe in is they believe that they're going to put it in front of our face to show us what they're doing, but we're just going to think it's entertainment. I know this sounds crazy, by the way, but this is also how I think it works. So they put this stuff in front of our face, also because maybe it seeds our subconscious minds, and also because in a way, the way our reality works is I believe we have a level of free will. So as a collective consciousness, we need to be, in a way, allowing it to happen. It's like from an energetic point of view, they're like, well, we're putting it in front of your face and you guys are just allowing it to happen. And that's kind of the idea, is that then they're more cosmically allowed to do it. And I know that sounds crazy, but here's the thing. This would include certain movies. Okay, so one of the movies that really pokes out to me that I became aware of after I started learning about this was the elite and what they do with very dark magic. This gets very dark. If you watch the documentary or the show on YouTube called Out of the Shadows, not a show, it's just a documentary. It's kind of hard to find right now, even though it's got 8 million views for some reason. What they'll find is that they do very dark things with kids. And I'll share a little bit more about this later, but one side of this coin, if you look at the movie Monsters, Inc., which is a movie I loved growing up, Monsters, Inc., what did they do? The monsters would then scare kids, and as these kids are scared, it would grow this energetic like battery thing that then they would use for energy. Now, in different ways, there is conspiracy theory that these dark elite people do things with energy like that, and that's why there's such, it gets pretty dark. I didn't know I was going to go this dark with making this video, but with Pizzagate, stuff like that. So I know it sounds kind of out there, but like I said, these are things I'm just sharing with you. I'm just the reporter here sharing with you some of these things. Maybe they're true, maybe they're not. But when you look at certain movies, it has certain embedded things in it that may be showing us different things, you know. It's very interesting that in the movie Contagion, that a lot of that has kind of come, it's almost like years in advance these things are seeded, and then as there's certain agendas and certain things that happen, it's almost like it more easily fits into the slots of what's happened in the world. That's one of them. Now, let's move on to the second one. Underground tunnels / kids. Now, first off, this will kind of merge into a couple of them. Someone in my life that I know has worked and is retired now, but has worked for 20, 30 years at some type of underground facility, and has told me that 100% the government knows that ETs exist. And this person won't tell me a lot of other things, but he has confirmed certain things. And this is someone that I know and trust. And has told me that there are underground facilities that exist where they're doing things that beyond what we can even imagine. They have technology beyond what we can even imagine. And that this has been kept from people for a very long time. I mean, people don't know about this, but there's literally bunkers of underground facilities that go like many, many stories under the ground where they're doing testing and other things that we don't even know of. Plus, they may be harnessing and doing things with ETs. I know it sounds out there, but I actually know someone from my life that talks about this. Plus, many, many other whistleblowers have talked about this. If you looked at like Emery Smith, Corey Good, other people like that, and you could watch them and use your own discernment. However, there's already underground facilities that exist now that I believe, at least from the people in my own life that I've met, plus hearing their stories, really correlate with each other. Many whistleblowers have talked about underground facilities, and they're so similar like explanations. Now, underground tunnels and kids. Now, the idea as well is that when it comes to these kids, some of the dark things that these elite people do, and this Hollywood elite isn't just Hollywood elite. There's some people in Hollywood that are in it because they harness the attention of millions of people, so they were kind of invited into it, and now they're in it. But there's just these dark people that understand that the way reality works is that if they can keep people in fear and anger, then they're much more easy to control, and they do these very dark things within the collective consciousness to keep the vibration low so they can retain their power. So the underground tunnels and kids, now what I want to kind of share with this is they say there's a conspiracy theory that some of these kids are in these underground, not just these underground facilities that might be separate, but there's like these underground places that these kids may be. And they're in a way doing very dark things to harness their energy. Not very easy to hear this stuff, and it's not really easy to talk about. This is I just want to share with you some of the things that I've heard and that I think is, now this is another thing though. I was recently at my buddy's house in San Diego, my buddy Drew. He had somebody at his house that was doing EMFs, that was going around like balancing out the EMFs in his house, which is like the electromagnetic frequency. And what she said, I was talking to her, she said that she had a friend in Idaho that was doing, and it was a nurse, or is a nurse, and was at a hospital where they just had 1,200 kids come in that were rescued from underground, and they were rehabilitating them. And I thought that was very interesting because I was learning about this stuff, and then I go a couple months ago and meet her and hear that, and I'm like, well, that completely confirms that maybe there were and are underground places where these kids are held, that then some of them are being rescued now, which is very good news. So some of them may be conspiracy theory, but some of them are linking up with little reference things I'm seeing in my life. Where I hear about that, somebody tells me about that, I'm like, whoa, that kind of goes in alignment with some of the stuff I've been hearing. The third conspiracy theory that may be true is Roswell and ETs. Now, if you notice, back in the 1930s, 1940s, eventually we had a huge jump in technology. We went from like having radio to all of a sudden having TV and internet and all this crazy stuff. The rumor is that we had certain technology that was then reverse engineered, and that reverse engineered of that technology is what led to computers, and we had such a huge spurt that it didn't really make sense. And the conspiracy theory is that we reverse engineered. If you remember, there was by the 1930s, maybe you saw like it's a hot air balloon, and it was like what the media was saying or whatever the newspapers were saying. But there was supposedly an ET craft that crashed, and when it crashed, there were ET beings in it, and what they did is they reverse engineered the technology, they learned some things, and that was Roswell back in the 1930s. And now the idea behind it as well is that conspiracy theory that the government has had contact with ETs for a very long period of time and even traded and did deals with ETs back in World War II. This had to do with the Nazi Germans and some darker races, reptilians. You see, this stuff gets pretty out there, okay? But nonetheless, I think that it's things that's worth looking into. There's a guy named William Tompkins, who was over 90 years old, spilling over all of these things that he knew as a high-level, legit high-level government personnel. Very, very strong credentials. Over 90 years old, talking about what he experienced. His name is William Tompkins. Talking about the reptilians, talking about many different levels of this. It's very interesting. And this guy you could tell he knew what he was talking about. So Roswell, ETs, I've had contact with the government for a very long time. Another one is JFK assassination. JFK assassination with the bullet, certain things not explained, was an inside job. JFK got killed shortly after starting to reveal what is called the shadow government, which is that elite group of government that I was talking about, the elite. He started to reveal them, and guess what happened? He got killed shortly after that. Now, there's also a conspiracy theory that JFK Jr.'s son, who died in a plane crash back in the late 1990s, there's also a conspiracy theory that he's still alive, that he knew he was going to be taken out by the elite or the cabal, so he, in a way, faked his own death and went into hiding. He's been in hiding ever since. There's interesting evidence that shows this. Is it true or not? I don't know. I'm just here showing you some that may be true, but maybe they're not. I don't know. So I kind of encourage you to do your own research. Another one is 9/11, conspiracy theory that may be true. 9/11 was an inside job. Now, inside job, who did it? I'm not sure. I will say this. When you look at how there's architects that have gone recently, within the last like 5 or 10 years, that have wanted to open back up the case on 9/11 because they structurally cannot understand how the building fell with the beams that were in place and the way it was constructed. When in actuality, if you look on that of the video of it, you will notice that there were bombs that go off at different levels that then allow it to collapse. And structurally, it makes sense that happened because people and architects could not understand how it hit all the way up here, yet everything else collapsed underneath. So the reason architects, people that do that for a living, have wanted to open back up the case because it doesn't make sense. So is 9/11 an inside job, or did 9/11 have more to it than just what we are led to believe with the way it was being shown? I don't know. But what I do know is that the way that the building fell, architects don't agree and don't think that was something that was natural. It looks like there were apparently bombs that were placed at different levels underneath it that all went off at the same time. So there is something else going on there. I don't know if it was an inch. I don't know. I'm just saying it's shown that it isn't exactly what we think it is. Now, another one. Number 6, the cabal and riot and Soros. Okay, so here we go. The cabal. Now, the cabal is that elite group of people that kind of get together that want to like control the masses and keep people in fear and keep the resources funneled towards them. Now, recently you probably heard me talk about that, what's going on with George Floyd and everything that's going on in the world and the riots and people saying that bricks are being planted conveniently to be thrown. Undercover cops, or no, just cops in general, are vandalizing their own cars and writing BLM outside the cars. Why would they be doing that? There's people that are saying, there's different levels to this, but all pointing that there's a little bit more going on than we're necessarily being shown. Imagine that a crooked king is at the top of his castle, looking down at all these people, and he's thinking, how can I retain my power? And what then his advisor tells him is, King, you don't have to go to war against these people. You can just tell the pitchfork people that the torch people are trying to take their pitchforks. And then they're at war with each other. In many ways, part of what may be happening is there's an instigation happening. And if you look at who's funding a lot of these different things, you'll see that Soros is involved. And there could be an instigation there that keeps us divided, because the more divided we are, the less powerful we are. So that's another conspiracy theory that is showing itself to be more and more true as we go on, which I find very interesting. Now, the last part is Antarctica. Antarctica, okay? Now, there is rumor that underground, under the ice is starting to melt. I recently heard Emery Smith talk about this. He was talking about how the way that maybe it was Emery Smith or maybe it was Corey Good. One of them was talking about how maybe ET or first contact happens, or we first become aware that ETs exist, is not actually they come here. It's that Antarctica is beginning to melt more and more, and as it melts more and more, there's a ship that has been frozen, huge ship that has been frozen under the ice, that has been used for a period of time as well, where there's been different people that have gone there and looked at it, and there's this huge ET craft that has been there for hundreds of years. I don't know how long. But it's melting, and as it melts, it will reveal itself to us. There's actually rumor already that from a satellite you can see this as well. Now, Antarctica has been a place that, the forbidden place, nobody goes. But it could be that one of the reasons that is because there's actually a little bit more going on than we believe, than we're led to think. And part of that could be that there's some type of ET craft that's under the ice there, that's beginning to melt, that we're becoming aware of. There's also a little bonus one, is there's a guy that's been on Joe Rogan's podcast that talks about how Hitler did not actually die like we think he did in Germany. He actually escaped, went to Central America, and the rumor is that he may have then actually gone to Antarctica, even back in the 40s and 50s, when they had technology that was way beyond what we could imagine. And that, remember, there's these underground bases that were being built for a long time. They've been around for a while. So they're all over the U.S. as well, and they connect via tunnels. It's kind of crazy. But in general, these are some of the conspiracy theories that may or may not be true. You do your own discernment, do your own research to see what conspiracy theories have you learned about that you think might be true that I didn't share. I'd love to see what you have to say as well. Subscribe if you haven't already, and like this video if you want more conspiracy theory type videos. I can be doing more. And other than that, there's also a video on 3 hidden agendas that I believe are going on right now. You can click that video right here. Click it. Check it out if you haven't already. I guess it really resonated with people because it's got a lot of views in a short amount of time. So check that out. And other than that, as always, I'll talk to you later. Peace, much love, and namaste.